Hello, so we're back into Photoshop today. I'm going to basically show you some of the elements that we have to deal with within Photoshop. Primarily going to be working around layers. Now, if you're using Photoshop, Photoshop is a program that you have to understand what layers are. And so I have a document open that's a letter size document that actually has a layer in it that has this blue dot in it, and I have my move tool, which I can go ahead and just move this around, and it won't affect anything else that I have going on. So this forms like a layer on top of what is called the background. Background can be thought of as like your desktop that you're drawing with, or having a sheet of paper on it, primarily a clean sheet of paper on it, that you basically, it grounds it as a background element. So if I go to my background and right now is set to lock, right now if I double click it, I can have this new layer thing kind of pop up that's going to kind of like break it from there. So I could call it anything I want. I'm just going to leave it at layer 0, and I'm going to hit OK. And from here, now I can go ahead, since there is no padlock here, I can actually move this around. And as what you can see this checkerboard pattern. That checkerboard pattern actually refers to a void or a transparent element within this document. It means there is absolutely nothing there. It will not print at all with that checkerboard pattern at all. So it's like that checkerboard pattern does not really exist in this world. It's just a void of nothing that's there. So basically what it is now, that was before my desktop, is now changed into a clear sheet of paper with a white block on it right now. So I can move this wherever I want it to, and I'm just going to move it right there, just to have it in that same position. All right. So what we can do within the layers palette, if you direct your attention down to the bottom right corner, and you can see that there is a trash can. Right now, any layer that is light gray is considered chosen. And if it's chosen, then that means I can do whatever I want with it. I can move whatever on that layer around. I can even delete it, and that would be the trash can here. That's at the bottom for delete layer. If I hit this little plus or box with a plus sign in it, it can go ahead and create a new layer. That new layer has nothing in it. It has a transparent element in there, which I can go ahead and select something. So it's like I can create a selection box. And if I want to go ahead and fill it with something, I can go to edit and fill, and I can choose a foreground color, which is what I have here. It's currently black. There's a background color that is currently white right now, or I can choose a color of my choosing. So I can come here, choose a red if I want to, and hit OK. And then I have to hit OK again for it to apply. So now I have a red block on top of, in this layer right now. Okay. The little folder that looks like a little folder icon, I can create a group. If I hit the folder icon and I can create a group, which means I can actually drag any layer into it that I want. Like right now, I'm going to drag layer 2 into that, and I can collapse that layer. So group elements are actually very nice when you have to have a whole lot of layers, and if you have a whole lot of layers, it can kind of get away from you. So if you want to group them into different groups, you're more than welcome to do so. All right. So I'm going to actually come back to this adjustment layer thing, which is a circle with that in there. And I'm going to come back to the mask element too. I'm going to direct your attention to what is called FX. If I hit that, you can see what things pop up is like bevel and emboss, stroke, inner shadow, inner glow, satin, color overlay, gradient overlay, pattern overlay, outer glow, and drop shadow. So if I were to choose bevel and emboss right now, all right, I can choose that. And what it's going to do is it's only going to affect that whole group. That if I had more than one layer in that group, it's going to affect that group. So I'm going to come back and just choose this layer 1. Actually, I'm going to go to layer 2 right now, and I'm going to hit effects again. and go to bevel and emboss. Now, these effects are, I don't like to really emphasize these too much because this is where you can define yourself as an amateur Photoshop user just by simply putting in a bevel and something. You have to, there has to be a reason for it. So always think about if there's a reason for it, then you can go ahead and do it. So like right now, if I choose inner bevel or outer bevel, I can choose any one of these. Let's go to pillow emboss or stroke emboss. And if I choose the depth, which I'm going to do outer bevel right now, I'm going to choose that, increase the depth. I'm also going to increase the size. All right. And I can choose its shading, like right now it's set to that. It's creating this kind of like, here I'll go to inner bevel. That's more defined as far as what it is. So you can kind of see the depth that you're going to do, the size that you want that bevel to be, its softness, whether it's a very soft one or a very hard bevel. You can change the shadowing, which direction it is. Now keep in mind, anytime you change like a shadow will affect any other layer that you have assigned to bevel. So it's like if I defined a bevel around the blue one and I change the direction of the shading, that will affect the other layer as well. So keep that in mind. Anytime you change that angle, it will affect any other layer in this document. So, right? So you can play around with that. You can also apply other things as well. Over to the left side, you'll see that there's a stroke option. There's an inner shadow, inner glow, color overlay, gradient overlay, pattern overlay, outer glow, or drop shadow. If I choose drop shadow and I come to this, it gives me a new options over here on the right. Right now I can hit distance, I can hit a spread, I can choose its size. Whatever kind of drop shadow you want to do. I'm going to choose mine as being black, just so you can kind of like see it. I'm going to distance it away. I'm going to change its opacity. Opacity means how see-through is it. Okay, so you can change certain things about this however you want. All right, when you are done with that, you can go ahead and hit OK, and that will show all the drop shadows and bevel and embosses that are associated with it. All right, so I'm going to direct your attention towards the top of the layers palette, and right now I'm going to go to this drop-down menu that refers to normal. It says normal in there. If I choose that, you can see that there are other things called like dissolve or darken or multiply. These are what are referred to as blend modes, and what they do is they put that attribute on this particular layer to allow it to do certain things like overlaying, soft light, hard light, vivid light, linear light. And each one is kind of like different. It's basically whatever kind of look you're going for, you may want to choose that. So I'm going to go back to normal. All right. Now you notice over here on the left of each layer are these little eye icons, which basically refer to hiding and showing that layer. If I click that, you can hide it. You can click it and show it. You can also do that with effects. So if you decide, oh, maybe I'm not sure about the bevel and emboss, I can hide that as well. I can also do drop shadow, or you can hide all the effects for that particular layer. Now I'm going to leave my effects off because I do want to show you something that's often confused some new students. So like opacity, for instance, here. If we choose opacity, I'm bringing this down to 50%. You can see that you can see it 50% through that particular layer. If I go to 0%, means basically it disappears, or 20%, or whatever. You know, how see-through is it? So I go back to 100%. There's this option called fill, which has 100%. If I go down to 50, you'll see that pretty much does the same exact thing that opacity does, which it does. it does exactly that. However, there is a difference. Opacity will do the opacity for the entire layer. Fill will do the opacity for just the elements that are in there. So if I show effects again and I choose opacity and bring that down to 0%, you'll see it all disappears. Same thing goes for everything else. Now if I hit fill and I go down to 0%, you'll see that the fill item, the object that's in there that's not a layer effect, has disappeared, because the fill will only affect the object that is in that layer. It does not affect the effects that are being associated with it. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with that. All right. So what I'm going to also do is I'm going to go down here to I'm going to actually hide that box there. And I'm going to come down and I want to go to the layer mask icon. So it's this little box with a circle in it. If I choose that, you can see what actually pops up is a little, kind of like a mask element. So it's got the object here, and it's got a chain link, and then I have this block here that has literally nothing. It's like white. Now, if I go to my paintbrush over here, and I come here and make sure that this is all black, the foreground is black. If I come down here and I start painting, you see what actually happens is this. It starts to kind of like paint in that object. So what does that mean? Well, what it's doing is I'm painting away things that I don't want. So if I basically just kind of like do this, paint away things that I don't want, I can do that without destroying the image. Now, this is how it works. So right now you can kind of see in the sample box, you can see that the red square is still there. But there's this other one that I have all these black squiggly things in. All right, so what a mask is, it allows you to kind of like hide and show certain things without destroying or erasing part of the photo. So if I click this chain link here, and I make sure my mask is chosen, and I go to my move tool, you can see what I'm doing is actually moving the mask around and not the red square. If I choose the red square and I move that around, you see that I'm moving the red square and not the mask. So with the chain link there, it allows me to move both at the same time. So this is really great when you want to like only select a portion of the photo and keep the rest of it intact without destroying it. It basically gives you kind of like a window into what that object looks like. All right. Okay, so what I can do is if I want to make that disappear, I can go ahead and right click on it and say delete layer mask, or apply it, or disable it, or whatever you want to do. It's totally up to you. All right. Now, adjustments. This adjustments layer thing, there is a difference. All right. What I like to do with these is basically adjustment layers act like kind of like change the characteristics of the color of the objects that are above it. So if I go ahead and hit adjustment and I choose any one of these options here, like hue saturation, up here at the very top above that allows you to kind of change the hue, the saturation, and the lightness. So if I go ahead and change this hue, you can kind of see it's affecting both objects at the same time. Okay, I can increase the saturation or decrease it to go more of a gray, and then lightness and darkness of it. Now you notice when it goes darker, it affects every layer below it. That's what I have to figure out, is adjustment layers affects everything that's below that layer. Now if I were to take this red or this blue circle and I move it above this group, you'll see that the blue area is not affected. So if I were to go ahead and change all this stuff, you see it's only affecting that red square, not the blue circle. So it allows me to kind of like play around with those things. Like so. So this is an adjustment layer, keeping in mind that if you don't want something that's going to affect that one, you have to keep it above that layer. Or if I were to go ahead and delete this layer, yes, I'm going to delete the adjustment layer, and I come down here. Now, if I want to adjust this red to something a little bit different, I could go up to Image, Adjustments, and do that same hue and saturation. However, what this does is literally what I call destroying that layer. So if I adjust the hue, you see how it's only affecting that red square. I increase saturation, decrease it. You'll notice if I go to saturation, it will adjust only what's in that layer, not anything else. So keeping that in mind when you do this. So there's two ways of putting in a hue saturation. If I hit OK, it's like it will apply that into that block. And now I can't go back unless I go to Edit, Undo. But if you start working on too many things, you'll be too far ahead. So, all right. So that keeps in mind I have to work with layers. Layers are an essential element within Photoshop to actually utilize. So I'm going to stop there, and I will see you in the next video.